did a little research, on your career. I wanted to ask a little bit about the Sopranos episode you were in. I'm a huge fan. That's probably my favorite show of all time. Gandolfini, one of my favorite actors ever. So I just wanted to ask a little bit about you being on that particular episode.
Sure, that was the wedding of Johnny Sacks. I don't. You probably saw the episodes where like he has a heart attack. He's going to jail at the end. That was a great episode. I played the best man. And to shoot that whole like the wedding part and the wedding scene, the church and the reception took about a week. So we shot in obviously two separate locations. The wedding church was in Brooklyn and the reception was in Long Island. But a really great story is it was shot in like the dead summer. It was really, really hot. So I remember one time, one of the shoot days, Gandolfini actually rented out one of those ice cream trucks for the entire cast and crew and just said, just get what you want. Mm-hmm. Super nice guy. Super nice guy.
Being that you're from New Jersey.
Yeah.
What was it like to get to be on that show? I mean, when I went to New York and New Jersey, my buddy who used to live out there, first thing I asked him was take me to all the sites from the show. He took me to the Bing where they had the Bing ad.
Yeah. So
what was that like?
You're absolutely right. So like I was born and raised in South Orange, New Jersey, but I know all the places like the Sopranos shot. I've been to like Bada Bing's, like all the places in Newark, the meat places, the famous ice cream shop, Holstein's, where they shot that final scene. I mean, I grew up going there because my mother, she was born in Ireland but was raised in Glen Ridge. Glen Ridge is like the next town next to Bloomfield, which is where Holstein's was. So I grew up having ice cream there. Like really small shop in Bloomfield, but like iconic in terms of like something out of the 50s or like that just didn't change. So right. Yeah, I mean, and I grew up with a lot of those guys, from Newark and, all those things. So, I mean, The Sopranos wasn't really like a show that I was kind of made for because of like, it's not more the gangsters, mm-hmm. But I could totally relate to the people and just the scenery and stuff. Very cool. And it was good for production too.
Another show I wanted to ask you about was the Showtime series with Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
Again, Gladiators, one of my favorite all-time films. What was it like getting to be with an actor like Russell Crowe?
Yeah, so cool. I'm glad you asked that. I had a scene with him where I played a guy named Warren Van Deaver, who's actually a real character. Who I don't even know a story about Fox, but he was actually like the head of like IT and security for Fox. And the one scene that I'm in with Russell Crowe is he plays Ailes. So he's basically telling me, what can he do to spy on people? And I'm like, you don't really want to do that. But back to Russell, super cool guy. I mean, to me, I remember like, because I had never met him before until we shot. Mm-hmm. And I remember that you're in your dressing room and they're like, yeah, Kevin, Russell wants to meet you. So he was actually like, for that role, he had like a lot of prosthetic on. I mean, like, yeah, he had a you could tell, a suit on, his hands like rubberized just because of the playing Roger Ailes. So he was sitting on his chair doing the lighting and he just called me in and there's like 200 people around. And he just wanted to shake my hand and say, we're going to do the scene, it's going to be great. And that was it. And I knew for someone like him being in his status, working with someone like me, he was just kind of like icing me out, like, it's okay, And just from there, like as an actor, it just really puts you at a different level. You're like, cool, all right, let's do this. And then when you're shooting it, it's like, it just brings you at ease. Very cool guy to me. I mean, like, I know sometimes you read these things about it. I found him to be very, very professional, very good, and just super nice to actors.
Awesome.
So I had a great experience with him.
All right. I want to talk about the Iron Claw.
Let me tell you, you're going to love it. I saw it in Dallas. Yeah.
Harley Race is a legend around here. I mean, his wrestling school is in this area. Well, first of all, how did you come to get attached to the film?
So the director and writer and producer, Sean Durkin, who's just amazing. So I had worked with him on a show called Dead Ringers with Rachel Wise. I think 8 episodes. but they cut it to 7. Anyway, so I was cast in that as for the role called Larry. So I was in 2 episodes, episode 1 and episode 6 or 7, I think. So I had known him through that, which we shot during COVID, actually, I think in 21, somewhere around there. So that's how I met him. Obviously great guy and stuff like that. So I had heard that he already had me in mind once I was in Dead Ringers. But then, I was asked to audition for this role. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, I was actually casting Susan Shopmaker, who's great, actually sent me the size for Bruiser Brody. Can you read for Bruiser Brody? I'm like, sure. Looking at Bruiser Brody, I knew it had nothing to do with that. I mean, you know that, but I think, they just wanted to see if I could, it was more of like a formality. In hindsight, I know that I was never considered for Bruiser Brody. It was always hard. But, so that's how I knew. And then, I auditioned for it. And like a week later, they reached out from Sean and said, Kevin, you're being considered for the role of Harley Race. And I didn't know who Harley Race was, to be honest with you. But I looked him up and I said, oh, wow, this is okay. This could work. I mean, and then, so that's how I got involved with that. And then, it just went very fast, but I guess, it was always in there in the mind, like, what goes behind the scenes. So that's how I got involved with that. So during that time, like, Sean asked me to grow out my facial hair, cause they wanted to give me the handlebar stuff. And he had actually written in a speech for me. He took it from one of Harley's speeches where he's talking about, he's like, right here is, the belt. It's on YouTube, his famous speech. Mm-hmm. So Sean wrote that almost word for word. And he said, Kevin, I want you to do this speech, just learn it, because I'm going to add it to the script. It's not in the script yet, but I'm going to add it. The person who I really talked to about Harley was Chavo Guerrero Jr. Okay. Chavo is, right? Yeah. So Chavo told me, because Chavo is, the famous family. He knew him personally. Yep. And I mean, he was telling me stories, which I'm sure you heard. Harley would love to drive his, and this is when I first met Chavo, not even knowing really who Chavo was, and we were waiting for Zac Efron to come because we were going to train. Mm-hmm. And Chavo was telling me a story about Harley and how Harley used to drink beers. He was driving, God bless his soul, and that he actually had a guy in the passenger seat whose job was to crack him beers because he wanted to drive, and he would just smoke and he drank Miller High Lifes because that's what he did, right? And so Chavo was telling me, and he's telling me all about, he said Harley was the toughest man you ever meet.
While holding that title more times than any living human being on the face of the earth. The world's title, not the plastic garbage that you hear about. The world's heavyweight title that dates back into the 1800s.
Harley wasn't really a man of a lot of words. Mm-mm. He just really looked at you. Yeah. And so that's what I kind of worked on. Even before meeting Chavo, it was really just the essence of the stare and the look, and like, listen, you little punk. This is the way, this is what's going to happen. So that really helped me getting into character, because once you see our scene, and you'll see it's because I'm fighting Kevin Van Erich, it's pretty cool. Yeah, Zac is so good and so physically into it, and on top of that, Chavo was like, wouldn't you see, amazing on getting us to look like real wrestlers.
They in this movie look identical to the Von Erich.
Yeah, I mean, but that's how they were. They were punks. I know. I remember I read something like last week that I think someone said that Zac might have looked overly jacked, and I'm thinking to myself, no. If you look at Kevin Von Erich, though, right? Kevin Von Erich was, big and tall and jacked. So now he did the right thing. And like I said, he was great to work with. And once you see him in this role doing the wrestling moves, I think it's one of the best wrestling, first of all, choreographed movies I've ever seen. It looks so real. It almost looks like you're there.
What would you tell people who are on the fence, who are like, oh, this is just a wrestling movie, I don't like wrestling? why should they go see this film?
Very simple answer. It's not a wrestling movie.
Mhm.
I'm gonna tell you that right now. It's not a wrestling movie. And let me explain.
Mhm.
I thought it was a wrestling movie, and I read the script.
Right.
When you see it, it's not a wrestling movie. It's a movie about family. It's a movie about brothers. I mean, that's with wrestling in it. So I remember, talking to Chavo at the after party, and then Sean. Me and Sean like embraced. I'm like, Sean, who wrote the script? I mean, I'm telling him, I'm like, Sean, this is a movie about brothers. He goes, yeah. I'm like, holy crap. Because I mean, once you watch the end, again, not to give it away, but I mean, it's like, it's gonna grab you. And I remember thinking, I mean, wrestling is just like the icing on the cake for this. So don't even look at it as a wrestling movie. You got to look at it as based on a true story of the Von Erich, their story,
Right.
and sprinkled around that you have the wrestling. There's a lot of wrestling in it, but it's not about wrestling. It's about the the relationship with the father. I mean, and Holt is phenomenal in this. Phenomenal. That's Fritz. I mean, once you see him, I don't see how he's not nominated for Best Supporting. I don't. He's amazing.